All right, y'all. So, the draft is done, and day one feels like a really long time ago, but there were some takes that popped up after day one that I just needed to get y'all in here to talk about because going into this draft, if you said something like this to me, I would have told you were crazy.
Yeah, who said this? Who was it that said it?
It came out, Daniel Jeremiah said it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, bonus. Vikings upgraded wide receiver. So, we'll just read the little blurb here, and then I want to get your takes on it. So, the Minnesota Vikings taking LSU wide receiver Justin Jefferson with 22nd overall pick was the best value of the first round. He's perfect for Gary Kubiak's offensive system, and he'll end up catching a zillion balls from Minnesota. He's so
But
dependable, so reliable, and will always be where he's supposed to be. He's going to get open. He catches everything and will be really good in the red zone. And this is the line. I wouldn't be surprised if we look back after next season and say the Vikings upgraded over Stefon Diggs. Follow Daniel Jeremiah on Twitter at Move the Sticks. So that's pretty cool. And I know that, here in the Climb in the Pocket family, we hold Stefon Diggs in very, very high regard.
the NFL does too, clearly.
Yeah, and clearly the NFL does as well. So I needed to get your thoughts on this because it seems crazy, but I just wanted to back up just a little bit and maybe just get your thoughts. Myles, you can start us off here. If you
Yeah.
think of Stefon Diggs, the prospect, versus like Justin Jefferson, the prospect,
hmm
how do they stack up? Obviously, we know what Stefon Diggs is now, but with what Jefferson's bringing to the table, is this such a crazy thing that Daniel Jeremiah is saying?
Well, if we're comparing them as prospects, yes, Jefferson's the better prospect. He had more production in 2 years than Diggs had in three. He's not off. He wasn't off injured in college like Diggs was. He didn't have a lacerated kidney. He didn't have all these injuries come out of college. Jefferson also wasn't a five-star recruit coming out either. He has really good bloodlines, just like Diggs does, that we saw. But at the same time, we know that Diggs was the top-rated wide receiver coming out of his high school class, I think it was, or one of the top. Jefferson was a 2 or 3-star receiver, I think. He signed with LSU very late. So I think it's one of those situations where coming out of high school, they're different players, but coming out of college, Jefferson became the more prolific player, obviously played with a better team, better quarterback than Diggs ever did in college, and a better offensive system. But I think the biggest thing is Jefferson probably is a little bit more polished than Diggs was coming out, in the sense that I think Jefferson has a little bit more nuance, and I think he could beat press coverage come out of college a little bit better than Diggs could. I think that was probably the biggest knock on Diggs outside of the injuries was the fact that he struggled against press early on in his career in the NFL, and we obviously saw that when he started getting more attention as a rookie. That was a big issue for him. He obviously learned to deal with that, became an elite receiver very quickly. But I think if we're talking about rookie Diggs and rookie Jefferson, you might be able to see a similar type of production. You might have a guy that comes in and can win in a lot of those areas that Diggs could as a rookie. Hearing Daniel Jeremiah say that he's going to catch a gazillion balls in a Gary Kubiak offense when Diggs couldn't even do that is a crazy thing for me to think about, though. Diggs saw less than 100 targets this last season. Obviously, Gary Kubiak wasn't the offensive coordinator, but he was it was his offense. They're running a lot of those same plays, doing a lot of that same verbiage and formations and style of play. So I'm curious to see how that goes. I mean, maybe down the road, Jefferson's seen a lot of targets, but Diggs didn't even see 100 targets, and Diggs is a top 10 wide receiver right now. So how is Jefferson going to see a gazillion passes in the same offense? That's just crazy to me. Not that if they do it, great. I mean, I think featuring the wide receivers is the best approach for this offense. You have Adam Thielen, who's an elite receiver and proven that he can be a dynamic receiver. And obviously Justin Jefferson's a really good prospect who showed that he probably shouldn't even been available at 22, but he was. And he kind of fell in the Vikings' lap, hearing that the Vikings were trying to trade up to go get him. Probably wanted to get ahead of the Eagles based off of where who they thought the Eagles were going to take. They didn't take him. They took Jalen Reagor, which just made it even easier. Let Jefferson fall into the Vikings' lap at 22. But I am just curious to see how that plays out. I think in the long term, I think it's really hard to expect Justin Jefferson to be a better player than Stefon Diggs, because that's a hard feat to accomplish, that level of play. But I think at the same time, as rookies, if he has that style of and that type of production, I wouldn't be surprised at all, because Jefferson is a really good prospect.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. Like when you go and you look at like Justin Jefferson versus Stefon Diggs on a place like playerprofiler.com, Justin Jefferson is obviously he's a bit more athletic than Stefon Diggs. Like
Yeah.
speed-wise, they're similar, but he's a bigger guy, so that means he's a more athletic player overall. And he has better jumps, so he has better catch radius, all those things that you like to see. But Stefon Diggs, when you look at some of the other metrics that I know that analytics folks do like, his college dominator rating, share of targets, breakout age, all those things that tend to translate to someone being good. If you're good, you're going to break out earlier. The younger you get to the league, it usually is an indication that you're a phenom at university or college. Stefon Diggs has all those things in his favor. But as Myles said, Stefon Diggs also came with a litany of injuries on his profile, which that and going to Maryland didn't do any favors to his draft stock when he was coming out. But we know what he's turned into. Prince, Myles, laid it out, and Myles being Myles, was somewhat diplomatic about how he laid it out. Prince, I want to get your thoughts on it now. Justin Jefferson, pick 22. Everyone, all of us, ecstatic about this pick. Is it crazy to think that Justin Jefferson is going to make us forget Stefon Diggs, forget what we had, and we'll be able to come in the way they use him and, make Stefon Diggs a distant memory for Vikings fans?
Yes, I do think it's crazy. And that's not anything against Justin Jefferson at all. But I think Stefon Diggs was and is one of our most dynamic wide receiver that we had probably since a guy like Percy Harvin, and even before that, Randy Moss. And knowing that we had, several years out of this guy, 5-6 years, I believe, out of Stefon Diggs, it was, and then obviously getting the Minneapolis Miracle. I mean, he meant a lot to this organization. He was one of the faces of the organization. He was leadership on that team. And Justin Jefferson can still perform at a high level, but I don't know if that necessarily means that that's going to translate to what he was for the organization. And if anything, it makes you wonder that, yes, he fell to our lap at 22. I'm wondering if he could have fell to our lap at 25, thinking that you could have had two guys on the roster that were like that guy. Makes you wonder what this team could have been with a Justin Jefferson and a Stefon Diggs.
So I just wanted to hop in because I get what you're saying in terms of Stefon Diggs, Minneapolis Miracle. Obviously, that's a huge moment for the team. So, yeah, it's unfair to hold Jefferson to that sort of stature, like that he's going to come in and have one of the defining kind of franchise-type moments. But, our boy Flip Mozzie, he said when he kind of reads that, he thinks about it more from a usage perspective. Like, let's say they put Justin Jefferson in the slot and they feed him the way, or they feature him the way that they featured Adam Thielen in the past. Is it crazy to think that, like Myles just said, Diggs was not getting the targets that his talent said he should be getting? But if they do move Justin Jefferson into that slot role, is it crazy to think that he can come in and produce at a level that makes us think that maybe who's Stefon who? He comes in, he puts up more yards, maybe more touchdowns, gets more targets. Like, is it a crazy thing to think that he could come in, be used in such a way based on the skill set that he's shown that could make us feel like he is a great one-for-one type replacement for Stefon Diggs?
Yeah, that was kind of where I was trying to get at. I think the nuance of this conversation is we constantly want, I mean, obviously we talk about replacement value, but we constantly want this player to equal or greater than this player once they're gone. Obviously, like years past, when we lost Randy Moss, we wanted Troy Williamson to be that guy to quote unquote make us forget about Randy Moss, right? Whereas I think I want Justin Jefferson to be looked at as a guy who could come in, be very, very productive, but that is going to be how we think about him. We're not going to be thinking about him as a guy to quote unquote forget our ex. but more as a guy who can contribute to what this team does moving forward in the future.
Wait, so you're telling me, Prince, that you're not going to treat Justin Jefferson like we've treated the quarterbacks after Teddy Bridgewater? You're going to tell me you're going to do that?
What was your question?
You're not going to treat Justin Jefferson like we've treated all the quarterbacks after Teddy Bridgewater, are you? You're not going to do that?
You're asking if I'm going to –
that they're not going to stack up to the guy that I'm a Stefon Diggs stan. So, like, no matter what, Stefon Diggs it's not even no matter what, but, like, he's been an elite player. He was my favorite player on the team. But at the same time, I'm going to try to have a perspective like what we're talking about.
So, okay, I better understand it. I guess I'll put it this way. When we drafted Dalvin Cook, I didn't necessarily look at him as the same way that I looked at Adrian Peterson. I looked at him as like two very separate players, and they were going to do two very different things for our team.
That's a good comparison. I like that. That's good.
Whereas, like, I know, like, obviously with the Kirk Cousins stuff, Teddy Bridgewater, we wanted them to essentially be kind of the same thing. We wanted them to elevate the players around them. We wanted them to be the leader for the team. We wanted them to make plays on third downs consistently. So as far as those two, I'm more looking at this the same way that, again, like I looked at Dalvin Cook and Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson was great. He was what he was. I never thought Dalvin Cook as a guy who was going to replace Adrian Peterson. I thought he was going to be the guy that he was brought in to do. And that's the same way I look at Justin Jefferson. I think he's being brought in for a very specific reason, and I'm happy about that reason. I will still always love Stefon Diggs. I think he's a phenomenal player. Similarly, like how I loved the way that Adrian Peterson did at the height of his prime or whatever. It was great to watch. But I know that Dalvin Cook is going to be a different kind of player. So I don't need to compare those two because I think they're going to be something different in this offense.
That's fair. So Jason, here's my question real quick. When we look at, you talked about the offense and like them moving Justin Jefferson into Adam Thielen's role, then what does Adam Thielen's role become? Because, and it's not that Adam Thielen isn't a really good downfield threat. We saw, 2016? He was probably one of the better deep threats in the league. Then they moved him and Diggs around quite a bit. So then Thielen started moving into the primary slot role while Diggs played to the outside. Obviously, this last season, Diggs was the primary deep threat, which I think meant that he saw less targets because he was the guy that produced the most explosive plays. To me, at this stage in Adam Thielen's career, I'd have a hard time seeing him as like the primary deep threat and this running those same style of routes that Diggs ran. Not that he can't do it. I know he can do it, but as in terms of just like we talked about Diggs last year, his best usage probably it works for Diggs because Diggs can run those routes. I think Diggs is a little bit more of a dynamic playmaker than Thielen, and that's not even a slight against Thielen. But I think Thielen's best role was what he was being asked to do last season. That makes me wonder what the plan is for both of them because one of the guys, somebody's got to go deep, and somebody's got to be the deep threat on this team. Diggs was that guy. Jefferson can do it, but like Thielen, it might be best suited for him to run those deep over routes, the deep, the shorter routes, stuff like that, intermediate routes. But at the same time, I did like Jefferson's 2018 tape where he played on the outside and he ran a lot of those quick hitting routes, slants, posts. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. Maybe they interchange him, let both those guys kind of flip and flop. I don't know, but I am curious how that's going to look. Long-term, Jefferson being the AT role makes perfect sense. I think that's something, him turning into the wide receiver one makes a lot of sense down the road. But right now, I just don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, Myles, it's hard. I'm hard pressed to say any of the guys that we drafted later on or picked up in unrestricted free agency or undrafted free agency could step in and fill that role right away. But is there anyone maybe that we might be sleeping on the roster who's maybe had some time to marinate for a little bit and develop that might be able to step into a deep threat type of role? No? Okay. All right. So
no, there isn't. I say that because that's like you look at a lot of the receivers on this roster are very similar in style. BC Johnson, his skill set is similar to what they're asking Adam Thielen to do. Tajay Sharp, his skill set is like that X receiver role, and that Thielen role. Like his style is that like short to intermediate game, and contested catches. Justin Jefferson, the way he was played at LSU in 2019 was the slot receiver, contested catches. He did win downfield in that role, just like Thielen has in his current role. But they don't have that guy that you consider like that true burner, that guy that's going to be that deep threat that's going to stretch the field vertically on a consistent basis the way that Diggs did. I wonder if they're going to ask Jefferson to do that early on or not, because I think he can do some of those things. But I am curious to kind of see, as a rookie, that might be a little bit more tough for him. So I'm curious to see what that looks like.
And to that point, Myles, this was mostly the reason why I was wanting to double dip high. I'm glad that they double dip high at cornerback, right? I either wanted one of those two positions to be double dipped high because I think you solve one problem and I think you could figure out the other issue. But that's why I was looking for like a guy like a KJ Hamler, someone who could get further down the field. And then obviously with him and Jefferson and Thielen, you really have guys who are stretching the field at all, at all lengths and whatnot. I don't know if you have that guy on the roster right now, so that might be a guy that you address again next offseason or whatever the case is. But I think you've started to build, build an offensive roster that can be more viable and sustainable over the next couple of years. And I think they've taken the steps to do that.
Well, and with them running two tight end sets a lot more often with Irv and Rudy, both Thielen and Jefferson are both going to play off the ball. They're not going to as more often than a lot of teams, just because then both the tight ends are on the line of scrimmage, so both those guys can move around a little bit more. So that probably will help speed up Justin Jefferson's abilities as a rookie, just because he won't have to be on the line of scrimmage as often and pressed. So he can get some free releases and such. So that'll be good for them with the play action that they run and maybe they sprinkle in some more RPO type action, kind of like for the 49ers do. But I think that could be the best approach with what the Vikings do with Jefferson. That those free releases are going to help him a lot early on as a rookie.
Yeah, I agree, and I think also with his contested catch ability,
right?
I know that Kirk doesn't like throwing those balls, but knowing that kind of like when Stefon Diggs found Diggs early, Teddy Bridgewater found Stefon Diggs early. One of the things you found is he started to trust him because he could consistently win those contested catches, and as a rookie, it's going to be a great asset for him.
And Diggs was rounding people up as a rookie, so
exactly,
if Jefferson's going to do that too, then Kirk's going to throw him the ball. I mean, we know within this offense, one thing Kirk's really good at is throwing to the first read or the guy that's in his primary read if they're open. And so I think getting a guy like Jefferson to help replace Diggs is good for that in the fact that Justin Jefferson's good at creating separation. So you want guys in this offense to help create quick separation and be able to catch the ball away from their body. And Jefferson fits that to a T. So his fit in this offense is a perfect one with what they like to do and how they like to run this offense with Kirk Cousins. So I think it's a great fit for what they needed in terms of trying to help replace Diggs. And to be honest, I'm pleasantly surprised that they drafted a wide receiver in the first round. But I also did mention too that with Rick Spielman mentioned the other day before the draft that their intention was not to trade Stefon Diggs, and I fully believe that. They didn't want to trade Stefon Diggs. It was kind of forced in their hand to trade him, and they did. So to me, them moving on from Stefon Diggs, but then replacing him quickly in the first round rather than waiting in the draft because Jefferson was that type of player that they really wanted to help fill that role. It means a lot more to me than I think – not mean, like in terms of like what I expected. I'm just pleasantly surprised that they weren't like, oh, we don't need to draft a receiver early. We can wait a little bit. No, they were like, we need to make sure we address this quickly and get it solved because we know that this is a playmaker that we need in this offense.
And that to that point, Myles, I think that I think we look at the move of trading Stefon Diggs a little bit different if a guy like Justin Jefferson doesn't fall to our lap, right? If we are in that 100%. Maybe we take a corner, maybe we take a tackle or something, and maybe I would say Justin Jefferson was on that. He was on that cusp of that first tier, but just at the very top of that second. He was definitely at the top of that second tier, right? And again, if you fall to like maybe that middle or that bottom half of that second tier, maybe when we're having different conversations. Oh, was it smart for the Vikings to let him go? Because maybe we're still looking for another guy next year to fill that position. But I think the fact that honestly, it's kind of luck, right? And to Spielman's credit, he allowed the board to fall to him, and it paid off. Now, I think we have a different, like I said, we think we have a different conversation if that doesn't happen. But the fact that we can even have this conversation about can Jefferson, fill that Stefon Diggs role, I think it's to Spielman's credit.
Well, and also hearing that they were looking to try to trade up to get Jefferson because they wanted to get in front of the Eagles, I think that just says a lot about how high they had him. Obviously, we heard noise before the draft that Austin Jackson from the tackle from USC was the guy that they were liked, and I'm sure that they might have taken him at 22 if he was there. We don't know. And then obviously AJ Terrell was another name that we heard that both guys went in the top 20. So I think if you kind of look at the range of players on their board that they probably had, Jackson, Terrell, Jefferson, they're all probably right there. And one of those three fell. And they got, to me, the most important one. Well, I mean, I think Jackson would have been important too, but they were able to get Ezra Cleveland in the second. So therefore, I think they're able to fill all three of the major needs with their first three picks. And then you add on Cameron Dantzler in the third round. I think that just made the draft picks, the draft in the first 2 days, a home run. And then everything else that they did on day three was just kind of like a bonus. And then you add in those 11 extra picks. That's just a major bonus.
Yeah, I'm to that point. I'm happiest about the wide receiver pick first, more so than really anything else that came. And you got such I think a high caliber talent at the position.
All right, well, gentlemen, I think we nailed it. So just to get the final word from each of you here, quick hitter, Myles, over under. Actually, no, not over under. I'll just ask you straight up: does Justin Jefferson outperform Stefon Diggs' 2019 in his rookie season?
No. Oh, in his rookie season? Okay, that at first I was like, whoa.
No. Like Stefon Diggs last year. Like, is he going to perform at a level that makes us forget about Stefon Diggs as a rookie? Like, if you're comparing production to production, because it's a bold take from Daniel Jeremiah. So
it is. I think so. I look at it as like, man.
Myles, does Justin Jefferson outperform Stefon Diggs in 2015?
Yeah. I mean, I think he'll probably outperform that. He'll outperform, in my opinion, Stefon Diggs' rookie year, but I don't think he'll outperform Stefon Diggs' 2019 year. But he'll. My guess from what Jason's asking is he'll outperform expectations to the fact that it'll help ease that moving on from Stefon Diggs. So by this time next year, we're like, we have that extra receiver that we like. That might be an ascending player into like a wide receiver one type of player. So that, yes, I think in that case, then the yes, I think we will.
Okay, Prince, how about you, man?
I still say no, but I don't think that's to the detriment of Jefferson. I still think he's going to be a really great player. I kind of have the same feelings about Jefferson as I did with, again, the Dalvin Cook pick. Like, I really liked Dalvin Cook coming out. The fact that he was able to fall to our lap. I mean, we traded up or whatever the case is, but a player of that talent, getting him where we got him, I still think that I'm not comparing the two, but I still think Jefferson's going to have a good season, even if he doesn't compare to 2019 Diggs.
Okay, well, there it is. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on. Listeners, viewers, thanks for sticking with us. And yeah, we'll be back soon. Y'all have a good one.